Invite everybody to sit down. We can keep a very strict planning. We had over 120 people who enrolled for this session, so it's great to see that after Corona, COVID, people are coming out and like mingle again. So big thanks for showing up tonight on this beautiful evening on the sides of Wembley. My name is Thomas. I'm the moderator. I'll just be the timekeeper. That's my main role. My day job is at WWT. There's going to be a lot about data in all these pitches, and I will give a formal welcome address to Adrian McDonald, who's the president of Dell Technologies EMEA. So warm opening applause.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, great opening applause. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I see on the agenda, I had 8 minutes to essentially say hello. So hello. Thank you very much for coming tonight. Much appreciated. And thank you very much to all of our Fintech Belgium colleagues. We're looking forward to a great set of debates tonight. So thank you. A few comments. I think the finance world has been revolutionized more than any other industry by the potential of digital over the last given amount of years. And I think that going forward, fintech will accelerate even more quickly. If I look at all of the advances, if I look at all of the potential, if I look at the world need, if I look at the opportunity, fintech is in the middle of all of those changes. And I'm very impressed by the financial community that we have here in Belgium. Very impressed by the potential of the fintech community in Belgium to make a big difference for the country, a big difference for our people, for students, for people coming through the industry, and to make a big difference to the industry in general. From a Dell Technologies perspective, our largest market in the world, alongside public sector, is finance. We are intimately involved in all of the big changes. If I focus on fintech, obviously fintech is a very wide subject or set of subjects. For me, it's not something that can be identified by saying it's this. It's actually not this. It's, for me, a very wide subject that touches pretty much everything that we do as humans in life. And wherever we make a transaction, there's an opportunity for fintech to go make a difference. From a Dell Technologies perspective, you would know us for our history in PCs and our history in infrastructure globally. We've managed to build, with your help, a $102 billion company, which has been growing at pace. The main focus areas for us are around subjects of multi-cloud. The cloud market is changing at phenomenal pace. We have a much more educated cloud market than we had, let's say, 10 years ago. And we spend a great deal of time with fintech companies trying to develop and to advance the right cloud strategy for them, which for us in simple terms means get the cloud outcomes that you want, get the performance you want, get the cost that you want, get the resilience you want, get the data sovereignty you want, by engineering for choice and engineering for change. So we help fintechs to advance quickly through being the easy button for multi-cloud. Clearly, cyber is a massive subject. It's a massive subject for us. We have leading positions with fintechs around the world in their cyber profile. And then lastly, how can we afford all of this, in essence? If we look at the potential of artificial intelligence going forward, pretty much every fintech subject is built, I think, going forward on the premise of an aggressive use of artificial intelligence and analytics. How can we get to those potentials more quickly? And how can we use the power of digital to not only drive a better digital experience, better customer experience, drive more customer loyalty, but also to reduce the costs to serve substantially. Likewise, in the few conversations I've had tonight, we talk about the challenges we have around getting sufficient talented people in our industry. And so there's certainly a whole set of discussions there around how we can encourage more. But likewise, how do we focus on being more efficient with the skills that we have? And how can we create environments where much more becomes automated on a much wider scale, such that the skills that we have can focus on the most valuable parts of our business going forward? That's us. I very much look forward to the debate. I welcome you to Dell Technologies Belgium, and look forward to a great evening. Thank you, Tim.
So Patricia Boydens, I will ask you up here, she's the Senior Director of Capgemini, but also a fellow board member in Belgium.
Good evening, everybody. Mr. Secretary, my dearest fintech enthusiasts. I'm going to take 1 minute to announce that, Fintech Belgium is a non-profit organization, and me as board member of Fintech Belgium, we do this on a purely voluntary basis, and we are not remunerated. So I do have also a daytime job, and that is at Capgemini. And this evening, I can, with much pride, I can announce that Capgemini has become a partner of Fintech Belgium. So I'm very happy to spread the words to you this evening. And just a few words, we are a IT solution integrator. Myself, I've been in the startup world, I think, for more than 15 years. I know it was a big company, but I didn't know it was that big. It's really worldwide, more than 360,000 people, it's gigantic, but it's packed and full with experts on ESG, experts on digital transformation, on cloud infrastructure, whatever you need. So if you want to know more about Capgemini, of course, you know where to find me. But then let's move to the topic of this evening. And so I was asked to do a kind of an introduction speech. So I would like to take it a bit on a higher level and focus really on the EU level, because it's all about also fintech, all about regulation as well, and we all need to be compliant to this regulation. So let's talk about ADAS. We all know this regulation, but where does it come from? And if you take it a bit from more like this helicopter view, what does the European Union want? They want to build a very strong digital single market. That's what we want to do. EU needs to be strong, of course, on a microeconomic level. If you want to compete, you know the story about Asia, China, we have Russia now, we also have the US. So we need to have this strong, united digital economy here in Europe. So that is all about this ADAS regulation. Is going to help us to build this very strong digital market. And of course, we all know the fintech way. If you want to be successful, you need to scale, you need to grow, and you also need to have this interoperability. And that's also a word that we know, that we hear a lot in our Web 3.0 environment. So you need to use this ID, your mobile, your digital ID, your wallet, whatever, you need to use it within the whole of the EU to stimulate the strong digital market, the strong digital economy. So this ADAS regulation, so ADAS is standing for regulation for electronic identification, but also trusted services. I'm gonna come back on that topic a bit later. But what are, according to the legislation, what are the three main pillars? Of course, it needs to be available for everybody. It needs to be inclusive, so all EU citizens need to have the ability to have it and to use it, of course, and of course to use it within not only the public domain, but also in the private domain. And so that clearly stipulates it's not only for stimulating the government, but very much also for stimulating the economy to use it, of course, as we know, in our financial services industry. And then the third pillar, very important, everybody knows GDPR, everybody knows the user needs to stay in control of its data. It needs to have a track record when certain data was shared with certain parties, and on top of it, it needs to revoke that consent in any moment in time. That's the three pillars of the EDAS legislation. So the EU made some clear benefits. Well, what will this EDAS regulation, what will it bring to prosper the EU economy? Of course, everybody, like I said, everybody has a right to a digital identity. And you can share what kind of information you share with whatever your public government or private institution. And now we are heading to the topic of this evening. It will unleash very much more use cases than just, of course, this digital ID, because I think the experts later on this evening will tell much more about it, but it will have digital wallets. You can identify yourself online, but also offline. Why not? You can exchange that information with the governments, with other private parties. And very important, the EU emphasizes very much, you can use it everywhere in the EU to have your residency, to prove it, to work in a certain EU country, to study in any EU member state. So that's something important we must remember. Now, you also know EDAS legislation came in force in 2018, already some time ago. And then we had this public EU consultation in 2020. So now, of course, the European Commission is finalizing this kind of revision of the past legislation, and I think very soon we know already some details, but it will be finalized very soon to have this much more, hopefully, much more on these digital wallets, the possibilities that we will have as Belgium is a EU member state. So I told you about EDAS is not only about digital identity, and we see amongst these use cases, below, of course, we have the EID, but the EDAS legislation controls a lot more, and this also entails, of course, the e-signature, and I think there will be other parties who will elaborate on this far much more, but we have this big difference on this e-signature. It can be a basic one, an advanced one, and a qualified one, you know, the good, the best, and the better signature with all the technical aspects that goes along. You can have this e-timestamp, important sometimes indeed when you have bought some concert tickets or financial services, when you put in your order to get executed on a certain exchange market, very important. EID will come again this evening. Another thing that you notice, the lock or the green icon that indicates that you are on a secure web page. Thanks to the EDAS legislation, think about that, so that you know that you are kind of surfing in a secure environment. You have the e-seal, that you are certain that a certain document hasn't been tampered with. And last, but maybe not least, hopefully replace all the registered mail. And then when you are not at home, you need to go to the post office and collect your signature, and then you got your letter. So hopefully This will go a lot further than we are today, but I think it was kind of good to give you this EU high-level overview what we stand today. So now let's have the real expert speakers to enlighten us the rest of the evening. Thank you.
I'm gonna call the leader behind the CEO of It's Me on stage. So it's all about opportunities in wallets and paradigm shift in data sharing.
I'm gonna try to do it without the mic. If my voice doesn't carry far enough, just shout and then I will take the mic, but I don't think it will be necessary. Well, good evening to all of you, and thank you for coming so numerously. I heard from Alessandra that the event was sold out in no time, so I didn't realize until now that identity was such a sexy topic. So thanks for that. I'll kick off my presentation with something you already know. With the birth of the internet 30 years ago, that created a context in which a new type of economy could emerge, the data economy. And what is a data economy? It links to the economic activity related to the collection, the storage, the analysis, and the commercialization of data. So very soon, as you know, data was being referred to as the new gold, because it became quickly a critical raw material to drive growth and innovation. And the good news is, data is everywhere. It's abundant. If you look at the situation today, then the amount of data available out there is doubling every 2 years. So that's massive. But we shouldn't forget either that a large part of the data out there is related to our personal selves. And so the emergence of the data economy also imposes new challenges in terms of security and privacy. And so that's why we've seen an evolution. After a couple of years where the internet was read-only, we saw users falling in love with the openness and the accessibility of search engines, social media, video channels. We trusted companies with our personal information, and we started sharing and connecting without any reserve. But after a while, we also started realizing, and I think that will come back in many presentations this evening, we also started realizing that we put partially our privacy at risk. And that created a paradigm shift in data sharing. Because now users want to have control. They want to regain control over what they share and with whom. In other words, users now and citizens now want to provide their explicit consent if they share something in a specific context. But now if you take that example, how will we make that possible? Right? So how will we make it possible for citizens to get a view on the data there is available about them, to control the exchanges, and to trust the ecosystem? That's exactly where the digital wallets come in. Digital wallets are tools and applications and platforms allowing you as a citizen to store, manage, and exchange your personal data. Before entering into the details of that, I'm going to ask you a question. Because for each person in the room, there's a lot of data out there. You have your identity data, you have your driver's license, you have work attestations, you have medical records. Who believes in this room that in order to regain that control, you need to have those data all gathered in one single wallet infrastructure? I see very little hands in the air, and I'm really happy that I see little hands in the air, because that is something that is not realistic. Over the past 3 years, a lot of people have asked us at It's Me, why don't you create some kind of super app? You're already on 7 million phones. You're secure, you respect our privacy, it's easy to use. Why don't you give me the ability to store my other data in the It's Me app and to give me control over those data? Well, it's maybe the surprise of the evening, but I'll have to disappoint you. It's not It's Me's intention to develop a wallet for other data than your identity data. For the very simple reason that we do not believe in an ecosystem where there's only one wallet. And I'll explain you why. The first reason is what I call the ecosystem dynamics and data authority. It's Me doesn't issue any data. There are many organizations out there that have what we call authoritative power on certain data sets. It is your bank that will provide a guarantee on the validity of your bank account number. The COVID Safe application was a wallet avant la lettre, giving you access to your COVID Safe certificate. You have the notary application called EasyMe that gives you access to your notary deeds. And very soon, and I think that the Secretary of State will talk about that, the government will also launch a wallet with your government-related data in there. And so it doesn't make any sense for It's Me to add another wallet on top of that ecosystem. So rather than developing an additional wallet, we want to collaborate with the wallets that are already out there. The second reason why we don't want to go that path is a reason for data duplication and lifecycle management. If you start duplicating data across wallets, then not only you increase the environmental burden because of the data storage that is needed, but you also make abstraction of the lifecycle issue. Data have a lifecycle. If you have a driver's license today, it can be valid, but tomorrow, if you cross a red light, it can be revoked. And so if you start copying data across wallets, without those wallets being permanently linked and being kept up to date, then your lifecycle management becomes a complete mess. And I know that today there are technologies that make that possible, but in a lot of early stage implementations, we see partners struggle with the lifecycle management issue. So in an ideal world, every data point is only stored once in its original source, and it's consulted when it's required. And then the third reason, and that's the last reason, is a reason of resilience. If you group all data in one wallet infrastructure, an availability issue would immediately affect the entire ecosystem. However, at the other extreme, if you would go for a full-fledged decentralized model, where each of your data is stored on your personal phone, then that's not an ideal solution either, because if you would lose your phone, you would be on your own and you would lose everything. So the only data sharing ecosystem which we believe in is a loosely coupled system of data sources and data wallets that are connected and that are piloted by the citizen. So let's make that example concrete. Suppose you are a citizen and you have your government wallet for your government data. You have an application of your HR provider with your work attestations, and you have your banking wallet with your banking data. We would then, in that case, adhere to the principles I just explained. Every company acting as an authoritative source would put the data in their influence sphere at your disposal, and you would be able to control them as a citizen. But it triggers another set of questions. Because if I have those wallets and those data sources, how do I make sure as a citizen that it remains manageable? How can I exchange from those wallets in a secure way without compromising on user convenience? How do I make sure that I share the data that is needed without disclosing too much? And as a data consumer, so as a company requesting data, how do I get a guarantee that the data I receive is actually valid? That is what we call the paradox we need to solve. And in order to solve that paradox, we need to remove friction. by building on things we know, by building on solid and familiar grounds. And that's exactly where digital identities come in. What you need is a trust factor in the ecosystem that is connecting the dots. So at its Me side, we're today not focusing on storing other types of data. We focus on what we did best in the past, which is connecting everyone out there. What does it mean more specifically? Because I know you want concrete examples. We want to take up two roles. The first one is the role we already play today. Through It's Me, you will be able to authenticate to the data sources and to the wallets. It is something that is already done today. You see a couple of examples on the screen. You log into the EasyMe Vault of the notaries, you log into Dockle, you all activated your COVID Safe application with It's Me. So that's a role that is already put in production today. But there's a second role we want to add, to make sure that also the data sharing out of those wallets goes in a smooth way. And that's what we call the role of consent provider. So let's take a very specific example. Let's assume you want to rent a car. And to rent a car, you need a driver's license, your identity, and your credit card license. You could, on the website of the car rental company, find the button, Share My Data with It's Me. Once you click on it, we could request to the citizen his explicit consent to share those data sets. So the three data sets I mentioned, the identity, the driver's license, and the credit card details. And once we've captured the consent, we can link to the underlying wallets actually containing those data. So for example, for the driver's license, we could link to the wallet of the government. For the credit card details, we could link to the wallet of the bank. Once the car rental procedure has been finalized, you could even select as a citizen where you want to store the proof. In other words, you can select the wallet of your preference. So that's the idea we're working on today. Why is this an ecosystem that can work, in our opinion? For a couple of reasons. So first of all, we strictly guarantee the same high levels of security, just like today. If customers tomorrow authenticate to their data sources, and if they share data out of those wallets with accredited identity means, then the data consumers, so the companies receiving the data, always have a guarantee that the data is actually coming from the legitimate owner, because you have identified yourself in the process. Secondly, there's an argument of user convenience. There will be many wallets out there, but by setting up the ecosystem this way, you hide that complexity for the citizen. It is essentially use case driven. Because if you want to share data, you need to provide your consent, and then we will direct the citizen to the right wallets. After the data sharing, we will also provide an overview in the It's Me app of all the consents he has been giving. And it will also be possible to revoke those consents. So he will have a centralized overview of all the data sharing that has been done with It's Me. Now I hear you thinking, what about my privacy? And that's the beauty of the system. It does respect data privacy, because it is not because we visualize the consents that we have a view on the data. The data would be encrypted between data source and data receiver. And It's Me would not be able to read them, and we would not be able to store them. And that's how it should be. Because in a data sharing ecosystem, you want to have an ecosystem in which no single party can have a full profile of the citizen. So we would, in a way, be the highway or the tube to facilitate the data exchange without consulting nor storing the data. And it's by dispersing those data that you basically get an equilibrium or a good setup. And last but not least, that's more for the data consumers. It would be possible for data sources and wallets on the one hand, and data consumers on the other hand, to tap into the network we have already built. We have 900 plus companies using ITSME already. So through one integration with ITSME, they would be able to unlock all those data consumers and data sources at once, rather than spending a very long time in setting up point-to-point connections. So this brought me to the end of my presentation. We believe this is an ecosystem that can actually work because we bounce back on the key elements that have made ITSME a success from the start. Security, user convenience, respect for privacy, and essentially also a tight collaboration with all the actors in the field. Because setting up an ecosystem that is actually adopted by citizens and data consumers, it might seem easy if you just hear about it, but it's a hugely complex task ahead of us. And we will only make it work if we join forces and if we work together. Thank you.
Setting the stage for our state secretary. So thank you, Stephanie. She's the only speaker who cannot stay for the panel. She has other obligations tonight, but the other speakers will stay. So you will have to direct your consented question to her once the wallets are out there. So without further ado, I did not did a proper welcome since we have an official state secretary. No. I didn't mean that. I'm not going to make it worse. Big welcome here. It's a real pleasure to have you with us to tell us more about. That doesn't work well. I don't think we need a mic, right?
No. We won't need it.
We don't need a mic.
Yes. Do you hear me? Yeah, perfect. So it's okay. It was wonderful to hear from ITSME future. And obviously, yeah, that's me. If there is doubt, that's me. And I haven't any presentation. So
no. I see your notes are there. You're gonna pick on live on what has been said here, right?
Yeah. Obviously, I can't wait this moment since a long time ago. I think that I was invited in November. And for me, it was really important to be in front of you all because I saw that my vision of identity, of the way the government has to play a role. Yeah. What? I just come here.
Camera. There's a camera.
There's a camera. Okay,
sorry. Trying to be discreet, but no.
No, it didn't work. And I know that my vision of identity has put a lot of question among, and specifically in the fintech sector. So it was really for me important to come in front of you and explain my vision, how I see the role of government, on which tools we are working, and I'm really happy because the presentation I've just seen shows how complementary we are in building that ecosystem, in building that user experience, and that manner we can, as government, build digital wallets who answer the question: how can we build user experience? How can we build privacy? How can we build exchange of the data? How can we build also, we can come back on this, responsibility on the internet? And so all this story is really important for myself, and it will also be an important moment for during the Belgian presidency in 2024. You spoke about eIDAS, but no, it's also important to see how we will implement as government eIDAS in concrete tools and concrete application for the people. So first of all, what is the Belgian digital wallet? Because we spoke about eIDAS, that's a regulation. For many people, for many country that stays a project. For us, that's a reality. We are working on the digital wallet since more than 2 years now, but since I'm in charge of the Secretary of State of Digitization, it was one of my priorities. What will you have in the digital wallet? It was a little bit explained by Stephanie a few minutes ago. You will have communication, you will have your data, you will have your certificates, and you will have your identification. 4 important tools to be a citizen today. Communication, and that's really important because one of the weaknesses of Belgium is its complexity. We live in a complex universe. So many institutions, even the federal government, so many administrations, and so many strategy in terms of digitization. And so what I want to do, it's having one simple tool based on communication, and communication tool that you all know, that's eBox. eBox must become the tool to communicate between the government, the administrations, and every citizen. Not only one way, means not only to send you a notification to go on a website, but 2 way, to build processes administrative processes between your administration and yourself, and that's based on another regulation, European regulation, that's the SDG, Single Digital Gateway. So first of all, a tool of communication, a universal tool for your administrative process. Second, your data. It was explained a few minutes ago. Government have access to many of your data. We think that trust is built on transparency. We want you to know which data we have concerning yourself. And so the second part of the digital wallet is to have access to your data. We've spoken about the consent, we've spoken about transparency, we've spoken also about privacy. For us, it's important that you can have access to all the data. That's the second part of the wallet. The third part of the wallet is your certificate. It can be your passport, it can be your driving license. We owned it, we owned the information about the driving license. It can be the diploma. How can we exchange in Belgium, but also in Europe, those certificates? It was mentioned, that's the purpose of EIDAS. We are building that project right now in the digital wallet. So communication, access to your data, access to your certificate, and then first of all, and that's what's made, in French we said couler beaucoup d'encre, what many people spoke about. That's also your identification, your virtual ID. So those are the 4 pillars of the digital wallet. Normally, it will be released in the end of the year 23. Right now we are making some security check on the application, and in the coming weeks we will have a large-scale testing to identify the use of the digital wallet. In that story, that's important because I think that as we speak about digitization, we must identify where is the role of the state. What is the job of the state? And that was the question those last months as we speak about authentication, or as we speak about identification. What is the role of a government? What is the role of the society? And we've spoken about identification. I would like to speak about identity. Who are we? Who are we as we are playing tennis? Who are we as we are playing PlayStation? Or who are we as a citizen with our obligations and rights? That's something really important. And to my point of view, in the real life, our responsibility, our rights and obligations are connected to the fact that we are citizens, that we are a part of a community. This community, for example, is Belgium. And Belgium, it means every citizen, through the government, recognize yourself as myself, Mathieu Michel, you know me, And that's something that for me is really important. That's the role of the state, to identify yourself as a citizen in your rights and your obligation. It means that if you sign a contract, you are responsible for this contract. If you ride a car and if you drive too fast, you are also responsible. That's something really important. That's what we call the identification. And EIDAS asks us to provide every citizen an identification. So, to my point of view, that's the role of the state, to provide you an identification which is recognized by everyone in Belgium, of course, but also in Europe. And we are already working to make it recognized in Japan, in Africa, and so on, because that's really important. But there is also a second part of our responsibility as government, is to guarantee that you can use that identification. And there we come under the sphere of the authentication. That's what it's me, authentication. And you cannot build all those applications if you don't connect the identification. And I don't speak about your PlayStation profile. I speak about your identification as citizen. We need to connect your identification to the application you want to use. It could be your pension, your taxation, it could be anything, it could be maybe any process, a contract that you want to sign in the virtual world. And so the question that must be in your mind is that our responsibility as government is also that we can authenticate your identification. And It's Me and Stephanie just made a wonderful presentation. It's Me, it's just wonderful. To my point of view, that's the best application in the world to authenticate identification. And I repeat it, because some people think that I want to destroy It's Me. No, It's Me, we must really be proud of It's Me. It's Me, authenticate. Like the card reader, authenticate yourself to recognize you in your identification. But our responsibility is to guarantee that this authentication could work anytime, anywhere. And that's why we could ask ourselves, okay, we must be sure that It's Me or any kind of authentication can always be used to recognize myself as who I am. That's really something important. So, as we speak about the digital wallet, we are really, and we can be proud of it in Belgium. You know that a few years ago, we were front runners as we spoke about the EID. No, with my team, I saw Jack Amand from Beaux-Arts. No, I don't see him anymore. Yes, okay, Jack from Beaux-Arts. But with also a lot of partners, we are working hard and we are working fast to build that project of digital wallet. Stephanie told something I will end on that point. Told also about something really important. I don't think that the federal, to govern the Belgian digital identity wallet will be the only one. We don't want it to be the only one. What we build today are the building blocks which must be reusable by any wallet. That's how it was said. We will connect all the services, the applications, to the driving license, to diploma, to anything. And then we will give it to the ecosystem. We will give it to the bank, to Dockel, to Burgerprofil. Never mind. That's not our problem. What we built, it's only the connection between the databases of the government and to allow it to be connected to every application you can imagine. And we must do that with the best user experience possible, with the best safety possible, but also with the convergence of every partner we can have around this project. That's what we are building. I'm really proud of the job we are doing right now, and I hope that in 2023 you will also be proud as a Belgian to be part of the first owner of this wonderful tool for the future. Thank you very much.
I hope you're all as relieved and happy as I am. It's like it's an evening of love. We have the Deputy Prime Minister expressing love for It's Me. I think there's been a lot of wind that you took from the critique on earlier communications, and I feel that this was really good to set. No, this was really clear. For me, it was very clear. And so I was going to ask, by show of hands, who has It's Me on their phones? Ooh, that's more than the Belgian market penetration. So a lot of love in the room, and this is also my intro to the next speaker. Who has an ID card in their wallets? A physical one, not a seal. Very high penetration too. So without further ado, I'd like to invite you on stage. I'm going to give you a clicker here. Yeah, there you go. I'm giving everything. So, hello. Yes.
I think I'm going to use the microphone. And, I want to spare my voice this evening. Good evening to everybody. I'm going to try to give you a view from the private sector. I'm working for a company that have been implemented worldwide, basically ID systems for governments in the EMEA and in Asia. And I'm going to try to be complementary to what the previous speakers have said and link it back to the EIDAS and specifically to the digital wallet instructions that are contained within EIDAS. Basically, not to repeat the Capgemini speaker, EIDAS, the first version 2014 was not a big success. It was about digital identity, trust services, and about the obligations that member states had to give to the different users, citizens, and companies to actually be able to do business and to interact with government. We saw that private sector was not really taking it up. When you were traveling, the interoperability aspects were not really there. There were not enough initiatives. And when the pandemic arrived, we saw that there was a revisit of that and a real push for the acceleration of the digitalization. So when the V2 was in draft, we saw that there was a big focus on really making this work this time. And as one of the speakers already highlighted, it's very probable that under the Swedish current presidency, before the end of the summer, it might be voted in European Parliament. So what about the obligation to actually go for this digital wallet? And Stephanie and the Secretary of State already mentioned it. It's a key corner block on obligations for the 27 to actually introduce it. So what is our view as being a private company on what is going to be looking like? Basically, these are the key aspects which are linked to the wallet, which are coming back every time. It has to be interoperable because the interoperability was really missing a little bit under the previous version. It has to be multi-purpose. It was already said we shouldn't stick to just some of the basic services, but we have to go broader than that. It has to be multi-standards. There are some international standards. We're sitting in those committees. I'm going to come back on this. ISO standards, which are practicable worldwide, but also standards in the travel area. Standards set by ICAO, standards which are dictating all of your passports and passport chips, making sure that when you travel to Colombia, that they can read what is your identity all about. Usable online and offline, this is a very crucial one. It was already highlighted by one of the speakers. The offline usage puts some limitations and also pushes some of the security aspects of the solution. And offering at minimum some of the services that you can see on the slides, being authentication, signing, and the famous mandates and attestations. And all of that, and I think Stephanie already emphasized it a lot, under the user's control. I think the privacy-related aspect is really a crucial one. You find it back, and this is really a big game changer. This was already highlighted several times. Now, what is really the challenge that government is facing? I think if you show it with the three circles, that's what we're all breaking our heads on. On one hand, security. Yeah? You know, these cheap ID cards that you all have in your pockets, chips in passports, these are very intelligent devices. We call them tamper resistant. You try to hack into them. Basically, at the end of the day, if they can't stop you, they'll clear the memory. So you find zero assets, okay? They are really solid. They are common criteria certified. How the hell do we build this equivalent in an app running on American, Chinese, or whatever operating systems? How can I protect that? How can I ensure that we don't control the devices? Whilst the Secretary of State and his colleagues need to ensure that it's inclusive. Something that for private companies is less important, but the government needs to guarantee inclusivity. And user convenience. If it's not usable, if you have to click 50 times, or even worse, carry another hardware token, will it be used? And that's where the three concerns meet. That's what governments are discussing and companies implementing the wallets. Now, where are we exactly at the moment? I was talking about the Swedish presidency. We have the trilogue that is ongoing. So we have Commission, Parliament, and Council talking about the latest amendments. We have 4 large-scale pilots that are launched. In 2 of those, the fourth and the third one, Belgium is participating. So we're really at the forefront, and I can only emphasize what was said, is that really the architecture is being elaborated by the Secretary of State is really advanced. It can put us on the forefront of the digital map again. And there's also a reference implementation being built right now. That's where we are. So we're close actually to the launch, to the final aspects of this part. Now, this is not the only legal initiative. Some speakers already talked about the driver license. Well, there's actually a draft directive in the making. This is also a game changer and more quick than we all think. Look at the timelines. 2025, the regulatory framework should be set. 1 year later, the member states have to recognize mutually the mobile driving licenses. That's the acronym MDL. 2027, the standard issuance of our driving license will be digital. You will have to ask for a card. I mean, that's a big game changer. This is a legal initiative which is parallel to the EIDAS. Okay? Which means it's evident with what is happening here in Belgium that if you link both, of course, that is a fantastic opportunity. Because as was explained, this driver license is like an attestation, a qualification of your ability to drive, and you have to manage the life cycle and the dynamic aspects of it. So it's 2 initiatives really in parallel going down as we speak. Now, what is the role of the government? And what is the role of private companies? And where are the challenges? First of all, it was already mentioned, you have the basic services set. There will not be one wallet, we don't believe that. There's an ecosystem of wallets, but there is a role for government. And we are present in most of the EU countries for the last 25 years. If I summarize what we hear from 90% of the member states, they all say the basic legal identity should be issued by government. That's in the hands of the government. They are stating that I am a citizen part of that country, or linking it back to their mandates as a managing director of the company. So which means that, and I quote a little bit the Belgian government, that the functional equivalence of the physical documents we all know today with the chips inside, the authentication and signing functions, you will find them back in these famous digital wallet government apps. But also the other government issued documents. The minimum would be this passport, driver license, the minimum set of abilities that is issued by government, which does not mean that there should be an exclusivity of the government. The issuance, yes, but we might find them back in a lot of other private wallets, taking into account what Stephanie was saying, that then the dynamic aspect of those documents, keeping them alive and updated, is a very important aspect of that. So that's the first one. That's the minimum mandate of the government. In terms of the business model, I refer to what I just said on the offline use. Imagine we're driving, we're in the north of Romania, and I have nothing against Romania, it's a fantastic country. We don't have coverage. I don't know if you've been driving, I've been driving there. No coverage, it's raining, it's dark, 11 o'clock at night. I'm overspeeding, they're stopping me. That didn't stop me in Romania, by the way, I was overspeeding elsewhere. So they stop you, and they say, okay, sir, it's 2027, show me your driver's license. I have it on an app, right? And the policeman has a smartphone, which is what we call the controlling app. At that moment, I can't go online. It won't work. That's why the EIDAS is imposing an offline use case. And the data that he or she is checking need to be controllable and authentic, running on the same American operating system on that mobile phone we might not trust. Okay? That kind of business cases for private companies is difficult to manage because most of the wallet providers that you see are into the transactional models. We're on the fintech here, we all know the transactional models, we like it a lot, right? Makes us highly profitable. In a disconnected mode, it's much more complicated to manage. That is again reinforcing the role of the government. Thirdly, also it is complicated for a democratic government to say, look, okay, you want a passport, I'll give you one, but you need to install private company X app and you'll get it. Exclusivity for this kind of things. Maybe I'm a citizen, I don't want this private sector app. Maybe I just want to be entitled to have my passport because I was ordering it from the Foreign Affairs Ministry. So you see and you feel that this minimum basic set of services needs to be provided by the government. Does it mean that government has to do it all? Of course not. I mean, you see a lot of initiatives, and Stephanie already said it, a lot of beautiful initiatives integrating the services that governments are providing. And you can, on one hand, actually integrate other functionalities, other attestations, link it to other authoritative sources, as Stephanie was saying, or you can also add services to the government initiative and actually start to negotiate with them and add other attestations or provide formatting and signing functionalities to this wallet. So yes, we have exactly the same view, even though we didn't see each other's slides, that there will be an ecosystem of wallets with a small beta that the government has a basic role to play. And we're actually living in a wonderful country for this, proud to be Belgium, because since 40 years, we have the population register. So we have fantastic authentic source that have been issuing the legal identity for many, many years. And we see that the two main ministries, I cannot say, federal public services, are putting their hands together to actually step up and to, as Michel was saying, to relive what we lived in 2002, to be really a world leading stars here in terms of this kind of solution. And together with the speakers here present, and I think that Jens is coming up with some fantastic technologies how to secure everything. I think we have a great audience, and I'm honored to be speaking for you tonight. Thank you very much.
First introduction for our next speaker, Frank Lucy, who's from Digital KYC by Proximus, who will bring us to the business side of things and how can you get a higher lifetime value with digital IDs. So without further ado, here's the clicker and the microphone.
Click on mic. All right. Nice being here. Pleasure. The work. Let me see. Here we go. Okay. I'm a bit of an alien here because I'm from Luxembourg. But actually, you know, we have political union still between Belgium and Luxembourg and Netherlands, Benelux, and it still has an acting part today. So we should maybe, you know, not undermiss that. I heard very interesting stuff. War on talent. I mean, talking about value, leave on the table, but not being able to recruit people because you cannot certify their degrees. Huge loss of value for our society right now. You know, I need AI people, I need techies. Wow, we're struggling with this. But my topic today is basically to look why it is so important for companies to get this right, whether they deal with customers, being private individuals or companies, right? It's about customer lifetime value. What's determining this? Just go into definitions for a few minutes, right? So basically, the lifetime value is driven by the revenue per annum, right? And that has to be adjusted basically for the customer churn, right? So the amount of years a client will stay with you on average basically depends on the amount of customers that you retain every year, right? And just deduct from this the onboarding cost, right? The cost of acquisition of a client, right? Now, what are the factors that basically drive this on top of acquisition cost? And I'll come to that is the customer onboarding experience. So let's first talk about the problems linked to this. We have plenty of research on this, and basically what it says that a lot of clients will abandon working with you. We're talking 40 to 74%. This is huge. If the onboarding experience is not good, they're gone. By the way, it's the same for government services. Sorry to tell you, right? But you know, they'll then go back to the counter and all that stuff. You know, same story basically. And in 63%, the onboarding is actually a key to have people consume a good. What this means is that the sympathy you're building during the onboarding or the reverse is going to kind of entice people to consume more or less, right? So if you look at conversions, it clearly is very clear too. I mean, 10 times higher conversions if the onboarding runs smoothly. I.e., they become paying customers afterwards. That's what the conversion is at the end of the day, right? So the CLTV goes up, but also on the other side, basically, you can see if the onboarding is poor, you look at clients who voice dissatisfaction, and the churn rate goes up at 23%. Now that's real money on the table. And that applies to individual clients, but also like for a bulk of SMEs who consume your services, right? They can be as frustrated as an individual out there. And finally, and added this, if you go omni-channel, that's kind of a teaser to what comes afterwards. You have higher consumption behind that. So, you know, the framework we are operating in, and we all know this in fintech, is that we actually oblige to certain things when we onboard a client. right? It's linked to compliance, it's linked to terrorist finance, it's linked to sanctions. It's going more and more over time. So unfortunately, we got to satisfy the regulation, because if you don't, we're subject to penalties ourselves, the companies. We have reputational damages and all that goes with it, right? So I just throw 3 examples of flows. What does it mean basically to onboard and identify clients? So an onboarding is fairly classic. You initiate, they select and configure servers, put it in the cart, and then there's something called registration. It could happen before and later, it doesn't really matter. But that's the zone where digital ID or ID will play a role. There are different ways of doing this, right? So there's basically the ID collection authentication. Well, this is basically a piece of ID. It could be NFC based. It could be It's Me. I mean, we implement all different versions here. There you must somehow take this and give a score saying, we think this is true. At the same time, you'll preferably want to collect as much information as you can, so you don't have to ask the clients for any information. If you can do that digitally, I mean, if they hold it in front of the camera and show you It's Me, you have plenty of information there, date of birth and all that stuff, right? Then you go to biometrics. Facial actually was shown on the video by It's Me, right? They had a very short, slow moment with facial basically there. So you match basically the person doing this, because it could be an authentic ID, but it could not be the right person, right? With the ID it's being shown to you. Then you can do something like, documents you can add and a one-time passport, that's then you're done. So this is typically an onboarding process that is semi-sophisticated, right? So you need to get this right based on digital ID. The other thing you need to get right is basically the customer is returning client now. So you must identify him again, him or her. That means basically if you go for what today becomes increasingly relevant, strong client authentication. So it builds on 3 pillars, and many jurisdictions said you need to have satisfied 2 out of 3 pillars. It's on one side something that the client customer knows, a PIN code or whatever, right? And basically some kind of multi-factor authentication, meaning a device they own. We know they own. Now we build on It's Me here, right? They own their mobile phone, and something they are. So biometrics of the face, the voice, and all that stuff, right? Then we add something else, actually. It's the ongoing identity that people have when they operate within your ecosystem, right? Meaning I can fake ID, I can fake certain things. I know it becomes more and more difficult, but this portion is actually while the customer operates in your ecosystem, there is things like the device fingerprint, there's geolocation, there are behavioral metrics, and actually these things are very, very tough to fake over time. And these type of identity attributes are becoming increasingly important to detect fraud and people who do try to play a false game. I can try to get through the entry gate, but to actually act like your usual consumer for 15, 20, and 30 minutes, you need tons and tons of data as a fraudster to be able to replicate that. And that is very, very tough to get. Go to the deep web, and if you want to buy a credit card number, it starts at a few dollars. I checked yesterday, if you want a credit card that has a $5,000 spending value on it, it costs 120 euros. Not too bad. I want a US passport, $800. Okay. So this is all stuff you can buy and somehow try to use. This, I found nowhere to buy. How is Mrs. or Mr. X misbehaving when they shop on Amazon for 30 minutes? Very difficult to buy out there, right? Okay. So just think about it in terms of identity attribute, and same with device fingerprints. Very difficult to buy, right? So what can you actually do to improve your client lifetime value by creating kind of a convenient onboarding and a convenient ID? So it's got to be fast. Yeah, that's evident, right? Fluid and frictionless, but there's a twist there. Certain studies actually show that in certain environments, the end clients do expect a bit of friction, because friction for them represents security and safety. So if you do, say, oh, you create a bank account, you're done in 30 seconds. A lot of clients are going to say, whoa, that's not what I expect. Because the bank, I need to trust it and so on. It's to shop. If you're a gamer, you want to bet on the next goal. I mean, we have clients in this field. They want to onboard within 1 minute. They're with their buddies in front of the TV, they're eating chips, drinking beer. I want it to be done in 1 minute. I want to bet on the next goal. If you want to do something safer, you actually expect a bit of friction. So this kind of fluid and frictionless, you need to balance it. Intuitive client experience, super important. And I heard before, I think it was Stephanie who said, yeah, people, they want, have more control in their data. I'm going to, and not preempting what we're going to talk about here, sometimes when I see how people click through in terms of accepting whatever is thrown at them and say, yes, 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 because they want to do, get what they want to get, I'm not sure how sensitive they really are about their data, quite frankly. So, intuitive, but being intuitive is super important. Tailored and personalized flow. Now that's an interesting one because you're going to tell me, okay, a returning client, fair enough, when they're on board, how do I do that? But actually, if you come from scratch based on some attributes, say, well, this new client looks like they are that and that type of profile, and based on this, you can change the onboarding flow, you already are differentiating yourself compared to others. I.e., let's say you have the Send Onboarding Pro for business client who has 5,000 employees or business client who has 100 employees. It may not be the right thing to do. If I can early on identify this is a small, SME, very small company, so I should have a different flow, you become a winner compared to others who say, oh, well, I'll use everything, the standard flow for everybody, right? Hand-holding, very important. So the little chat thing, but also little videos people can click on to see how do I do this and things like this. So never lose a customer. We have something that we implemented, for example, everything is digital in what we built, but actually if something doesn't work, there's still agents out there that can manually, they're former customs officers, police, and so on, that will manually review an ID and give back a score. It's made in a secured manner. The thing is the client can continue shopping. You don't lose them. Right, that's really important. Never get them out of the ecosystem, and you get them back by saying, "Oh, there's an okay. It's been done manually this time, but it doesn't really matter." Omnichannel. So this is an important one actually. You need to give the client every option to interact with you, mobile phone and so on, but also omnichannel also means any type of identification. So we have launched a few projects with different kind of counterparts, and we had certain assumption on the ID method these clients would prefer. And we're sometimes totally surprised. And if we had from scratch assumed, oh, this is the way people are going to identify, we'd have lost a lot of clients for our clients. So open all the gates, be open basically to give the client actually the freedom to decide what they want to do, right? You may not know, maybe your client base is a lot of people who are, seniors, they still want to put their passport in front of a camera like old style. And if you don't do it, you lose them, right? So that's why Omni is so important. So simple ID identification, okay. Then things like e-forms, basically, right, where people type things basically on screen and so on. Electronic signatures, that comes back to ADAS, is going to be super important. I mean, who wants to sign on a piece of paper and so on? If there's any paper-based stuff, and show success. Now, this seems to be a strange thing, but actually, here again, science shows if you tell people, even during the process, that they've been successful at something, it's like encouraging somebody. They like it. Yeah, I mean, they will basically persist. You're nearly done. Great. At the end, success, your onboarding is done. It's very simple stuff, but by doing this, you can hike basically your onboarding rate somewhere at 10, 15%. That's really money on the table, right? So this is a design thinking part of the process, right? 1 minute. Okay, yeah. Okay, I'm going to quickly go over a few new technologies that you may want to account for if you build for future identification. We talked extensively about e-wallets, and I also believe that it's going to be really huge, and a mix between the portion the government plays and the private sector plays going to be interesting. I talked about behavioral wearables are going to be huge. We're all going to be running around with these in a few years, right? For whatever reason. And talking about basically biometric identity, it will be very difficult to fake me wearing something you wear, right? There's a geometer in there that's going to measure the way you move, the way you carry your phone, all that stuff. Very difficult to measure. So this is going to be a form of identity that's going to come a lot. Chain analytics is more linked to blockchain. I'm going to put that also in margin. I think the other one is important is voice. We strongly believe that the future interaction between people and machines is going to be voice driven, right? If you see all these kids now who play in Roblox in these environments, we're talking really that's where Generation Z and Alpha is now dwelling and all that stuff. And basically the next generation, I mean, they're growing now. It's a lot like talking to each other, talking to machines. And what does that mean? That means you need 4 technological components. You need something that is speech to text, what is being taught. And just for English, we have over 50 versions because one, the English you speak in South Africa is not the same English you speak here, and so on and so on. Okay. Then another thing you need basically is you need to recognize the voice. This is the same voice I've heard before. So that's part of the identity. The other aspect you need is basically voice liveness. So when you saw the facial there that showed up, it won't only tell you that Mr. Smith is the same picture than on the passport, but it'll say this is a live person. The same as voice. It has to detect this is not a synthetic voice. This is not me having taped my neighbor and they're replaying it, things like this. There's technology for that, right? And finally, you need sentiment analysis for two reasons. One reason is basically fraudsters have a certain tremolo, and there's a high probability that a certain voice pattern means they're lying. The other reason is if you're interacting with a client and they're unhappy and you use a chatbot to get started and it's far more economical, you need to detect when they're actually getting angry. Maybe it's time to get a human on that call, right? Really. And that's what these sentiment. So this one technology implies 4 modules, right? And it's part of identification and being proactive. There's auto retina. This is, I know Metaverse has been hyped and now it's unhyping again, but it's going to come back one way or another, believe me, augmented. So measuring retina is going to be important. Basically, what I'm trying to convey to you, you need to get ready for these technologies if you want to be ready for how your customers interact in the future. Quickly, very fast, we have measured 4 impacts. So if you do digital identity, you reduce manual workloads hugely. Okay, why? Because you have less intervention of human agents that need to repair all the friction and the fraud that rises there. These huge numbers. Less fraud. We had clients who first month suddenly came back and say, hello, this is our first month with 0 fraud. Okay, that's money on the table. Client conversions, huge difference. And in certain sectors where they have unpaid fees went down up to 30%. So I'm just telling you that getting digital identity right, you're actually making a lot of money, right? And that's it. Thank you. I'm happy to discuss further.
I'm impressed with the wearables that you were showing.
Yeah.
Will be measured.
The team is testing me already.
Absolutely, you're ahead of all of us. So thanks for that. So our next speaker, Jens Egmond, will tell us more about NextArt investing in mobile.
So thank you for the opportunity.
And before you start, he's got only 5 minutes, so I'm going to be very strict on him. Go ahead.
Okay, so thank you for the opportunity to introduce NextArt and our technology. I'm going to start off with a quick question, and that's, do you need identity? And the answer is actually, well, in a lot of cases, you don't need it because you already have it. You've done your KYC, you've used an identity service to establish the identity of the user, and you simply have a returning user that you already know, and you want to check if it's the same person again. And that's what authentication is all about. And that's what NextArt technology is all about. Obviously, authentication is a crucial component when you want to build an identity service or a mobile wallet system, an all ecosystem. So to give you an idea of what our technology is capable of, an example of one of our customers, as they works, they wanted to build a mobile assistant, a mobile app, and they wanted to use it for frictionless authentication. Authentication in the mobile, also mobile to web. And I also wanted a unified user experience. They're not only going to using it for the people whose payroll is managed by as they works, but also for all the HR managers, also for all the internal staff. And they wanted something that's internationally scalable. So that's why they decided to use NextArt technology to build their own authentication into their own app. So that's what we do there. And on top of that, they wanted strong two-factor authentication without the incredible SMS cost that you get when you have a lot of users. And that's also something that we don't have. So what do we do? Well, we do technology. We provide technology that you can build into your own apps to do mobile authentication, but also to do e-signatures to let your users sign data, sign documents, sign a transaction, and also to do secure communication to receive messages in a secure way at the same security level, also send them back as the mobile authentication was done. So a few quick differentiators about our authentication. We provide multi-factor authentication, entirely passwordless, without any hardware tokens that the user needs to carry, without any numbers that you need to transfer. So really smooth user experience, and also in the branding of the company. Next to that, we provide a better user experience with better security. We have seen in the past that, for example, mobile apps featured eternal sessions. You don't get logged out for some reason. Well, you shouldn't expect a lot of security in those cases. And with regard to signing, we want to provide strong evidence of a signature that cannot be disputed and that can hold up in courts. And also a big difference is that because we're a technology provider, there's no cost per signature. We don't do transaction-based pricing, but user-based pricing. So to round up, a few of our customers, they all use the same technology, but in very different use cases. They use it for their internal staff to authenticate with a second factor. They use it as an MFA solution for students and staff. They use it to build an identity service, to build an identity provider that's externally available or available in certain cases like the Harbor of Antwerp. So thank you very much for this opportunity, and hope to speak to you again.
Our last speaker for 5 minutes pitch is from myid.be. Those who were online on the 7th of November 2022, I've seen them appearing on the Belgian Federal Trust infrastructure, and they were removed afterwards. And we were very proud to have the founder owner of Belgium MyID to tell us more about what his platform is serving, while not being on the cloud, but still continuing, right?
Yes, thank you. Good evening. We were online actually 3 years ago, not just the 7th of November. But I'll talk about that a little bit more. Before that, I want to give you, and good evening, and thanks for having me. I want to give you a bit of an introduction on where we came from. UTU Consult was founded 20 years ago as a spin-off of UTU Training, which is a technology training center. And our mission was knowledge transfer of technology. We were horizontally focused, not vertically focused. But quickly we noticed that a lot of projects that we were doing were around identity and access management. In the financial world, in healthcare, in the public sector, and other sectors. And that resulted pretty quickly in our first product called the Identity Hub. The Identity Hub has been very successful. It has been used in Belgium and abroad. It's used, for example, almost everything around healthcare in the Netherlands. Authentications passed through the Identity Hub. At the height of the pandemic, we authenticated or we processed authentications for well over 6 million users, active users every single month for things like requesting vaccination, requesting a COVID test, or accessing the results of that COVID test. I don't need to tell you that that is highly sensitive, privacy sensitive information. We've had that product for about a decade now, and because of that, we've been talking to many companies, of course. And at some point, we noticed companies were asking us for another mobile authenticator. There were options out there, very good options, but for some reason, and the reasons were different, for some reason, some of them wanted something else to complement the existing options. And so we looked at creating a mobile authenticator. We knew if we wanted to create a mobile authenticator, we needed to make sure that it was as easy to use or easier to use than the existing options. Because otherwise, you know, if it's harder to use for the end user, talking about friction, if it's harder to use for the end user, they're not going to onboard. We knew we had to be easier to integrate with if you have a website or an application than the existing options. We knew we had to be low cost, you know, not more expensive than the existing options. Otherwise, you know, why would companies choose your option? And of course, we knew we needed to be safe, as safe or safer than the existing options in all meanings of the word, right? In the sense of cybersecurity, resilience against hacking, etc., but also privacy. We knew we had to be safe. And we designed myid.be, and we think we meet all those criteria. So if you use myid.be as an identity provider, as an OpenID Connect identity provider, your users can authenticate with their Belgian EID card, their electronic identity card, or the mobile app that is activated based on that electronic identity card, which means that it can be used by about 10 million Belgian citizens. Basically, starting at the age of 6, children, when that's relevant, of course. We're in fintech. Children 6 years old don't open bank accounts. But when that's relevant, children 6 years old, through their parents, they can get a digital ID and they can activate the myid.be application. But of course, everybody over 18 as well, living in Belgium, living abroad, foreigners living or working in Belgium that have the electronic foreigner card can activate the myid.be app, or they can use it directly with that card. Our system has been online for 3 years. We were indeed recognized on the 7th of November. You may know that the connection is at this point no longer live. That's because there was a question raised. We have answered it. BOSA did the right thing in being prudent, in being careful, taking safety. Safety is very important, of course. We answered the question. We provided them all the information. We're waiting for them to follow through with the normal process, and we expect to be online there again pretty soon. But of course, we're not just there for government. We're certainly also there for the private sector. We've had clients that are using our system for several years now, and we are certainly more than ready for prime time for other clients as well. So if you're interested, go take a look, or after this evening, come and talk to me. I can certainly answer more of your questions there. Thank you.
I think actually you can stay on here because we're gonna have a panel. So all the speakers, I'm gonna invite you all up front here. I'm afraid we will only have you, if you want to take a middle seat down. You must know that there's a camera there, and this is a camera that follows sound, which means that if you're in the audience and you start talking amongst each other, you will be filmed and exposed. Yes, that's the punishment for talking too loud. So for the next 25 minutes, this is an open panel, and I hope you like the content we've learned tonight as much as I did. I think we've learned a lot from very diverse players. And so I want to open the floor. For those of you for whom it's the first event that you attend, you just stand up, you say your name, where you work, and to whom you address your question. I'll bring you a mic, and then we'll have another mic here. I will ask my colleague to bring it over. It's on the table, standing right behind you. Yes, if you take that mic there, then you already have a mic that you can give. So, who wants to do the opening question to one of the speakers? If somebody who has written a poem and we'll bring it. Go ahead. I'll hold the mic for you.
Hello, my name is Vincent, and I work for the Connector. And earlier in this panel, you talked about like voice as the next frontier, as authentication. But on my way here, I saw like a music clip of Drake, but it was not AI generated. So I'm wondering how would the challenges be with voice on,
Especially
yes.
Okay, sorry, you can take that one.
But first challenge is if I have an ID and then I make a facial biometrics, I have something to compare it to. It's tougher with voice unless a government would decide to take an imprint of your voice that's certified and can be reused.
I'll learn you the follow-up.
Sorry, I was not intending to give you more work. But
It's maybe an idea.
maybe Belgium or Benelux can become leader in that field, right? Who knows? But that's one of the challenges, right? You don't have that automatic comparison, right? So you need when the onboarding is a bit more tougher. And as alluded to, the other challenge basically is that, as you say, there may be deep fakes, right? But actually the technology is really in there to detect if somebody's trying to imitate your voice or synthesize it. So I'm not worried about that. The main thing is onboarding at this stage. Anybody else?
Anybody else want to comment on that? Yes.
Maybe. I was also really impressed by the presentation you did about the biometrical aspects of the recognition, the identification. Obviously, I think that we also must be really careful with the use of those kind of technologies, and specifically, as you mentioned it, AI hasn't shown yet the limits of its power. And so I think that it would be maybe a little bit too soon, I think, to trust deeply to the technology. So I think that we must be careful at respecting privacy, respecting, you spoke about behavior analysis. I think that's also things that for which we have to be careful, I think.
And I think that politicians will be amongst the first to learn how quickly the synthetic copies and
that's
fake
already
news
the case for
will be
me.
going. Already the case for you.
And on top of it, we already have technology to beat technology. There are already programs to identify if a song or a text that has been written by a chat GPT or whatever. So I'm sure technology always finds then a quick answer.
Next question here.
Hello, my name is Anna here. I'm an industry solution advisor working at Salesforce. I think I'm the youngest one in the room. And now I have a question for you. I think it's Frank. Yes.
That's how I identify myself. Usually. Before midnight.
So you spoke about KYC and onboarding someone and adapting your onboarding journey based on aggregated data, I assume. But first and foremost, if that person is not a customer yet, how will you get that data? Are you buying it, that aggregated data? How are you consolidating that? How are you harmonizing that? Just your point of view and ideas would be great. Thanks.
Sure. I mean, just to clarify, what I talked about is not necessarily what we do. My presentation was more an industry presentation, okay? Just to be very clear about that. But how you do this? Well, when you start an onboarding process, you have very often a device fingerprint. You have a browser fingerprint. You see the journey. You can actually offer more and more journey, right, to that client when they are prospective client when they start onboarding. They can click on this, and these things will already provide you with some hints of who they may be, right? So somebody using an Apple and an Opera browser, a browser that for people use that want to keep a lot of privacy, and then they click for these and these color patterns. You know, you can guess who they are in a certain way, and then you have the identifier of where they're located. You need to be careful, basically, when you do this. Okay, you need. I mean, I'm always putting disclaimer, GDPR and so on. But I just want to make you aware these things are out there. How you use them is a different story. But whatever you can use, and that's why I said before, I'm amazed at the consent speed of people. They could click, I consent to anything, right? So because they want it now, basically. But these indicators, if you can legally use them, also, it's not only about legality, it's about fairness also, right? You don't have to discriminate and all that stuff. I mean, that's really important. And with the purpose to enhance a client's journey, that's also very important. You've got to help people with it, right? Then you can differentiate yourself positively. So there are all these hints, right, that you get while the onboarding happens that gives you basically some feedback on who they may be. Or actually, it's not who they are, it's what they want. Help them to find what they want. That's what it is about. Yeah.
Maybe sure. Can I maybe complement it? Yes. I've explained to you that for many, many years we've been deploying systems, biometric systems, which have been standardized by governments worldwide, by United Nations. If you talk about the triple biometrics, the face, the iris scan, and the fingerprints. So we have seen the last 2 or 3 years very advanced onboarding techniques when you step into government systems. Right? Look at what some German companies, French companies, Japanese companies have been doing, which means that you're sitting in front of a live camera, you're actually waving a government document, you're reading out the chip, and these chips have mechanisms we call them passive and active authentication based on PKI digital signature technologies. They have to wave and can check the security techniques, and while they're sitting in front of the camera, and these techniques are called liveliness detection. There's actually scientific solutions which we already have in-house, where based on your skin color variation, I can actually tell you what is your heartbeat and your emotional state. You're going to tell me this is not 100%, for sure not, but if you combine everything, you're pretty advanced.
I just wanted to highlight that, of course, there is a tension between, if you're in marketing, something like that, to know as much as possible about your customer and the privacy of that customer. We were years ago, we started incorporating location into some of the projects that we did, because location is obviously sometimes it's necessary I mean, take an app like Ops Identify, which is basically mapping biodiversity. It needs the location of, that plant or that animal, because that's the essence of what it does. But if you're talking about location as a means to authenticate, you need to be careful that you're not pushing away users that say, why do you want to know my location? And it's not necessarily about trying to hide something. It's everybody is entitled to privacy, which is one of the reasons why with my ID.be we have lots of mechanisms to detect fraud attempts. But we don't ask for things like a telephone number, an email address, a location, and all those kinds of things. We rely on the Belgian identity card, which is a mechanism with a high level of assurance to identify a person. A very, very, good, powerful mechanism.
Only the porter is not in full agreement with you.
Yeah, I mean, we've had this thing for how long? When did we start issuing the electronic identity card in Belgium?
2002, end of 2002.
Yeah, it's something that can be proud of as Belgians, in the world, to have such a strong government-issued.
I didn't instruct him, it seems.
But then, of course, there are limitations, and you need something like my ID.be to make it work on mobile.
I'm not gonna look for the second youngest person. I'm looking for somebody who feels young. Okay, you qualify. A couple of years ago, I attended a conference on identity in the United States. In the United States, the situation on identity is completely different. People don't have identity cards. People don't like the idea that the government owns their identity. And a lot of the debate is around the self-sovereign identity. If I hear all the different components that have been discussed here on identity today, I wonder to what extent will we still need government in the future to deal with our identity? I will decide to move it, right? It's a general question.
Yeah, that's a principle. Here in Belgium, we think that, and that's what I told a few minutes ago, your responsibility as a citizen is guaranteed by government. So that's why I think that's a task of the government to identify yourself as part of the community. So as part of the community, you have obligations and rights. Of course, they have maybe not an identity card, but they have the social security card. So there's always a manner to identify yourself. And here in Belgium, we use the identity card with a high level of security. That's a little bit basic because, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, there are a lot of identity, and the authentication is there to prove that you are the person who was connected. But as a person connected, were you the person you are? And I think that's important because as we speak about the way digital world is evolving, the digital world on the internet was firstly based on anonymity. You were anonymous. But being anonymous and being responsible, that's maybe two things who are really different. And to bring responsibility in the digital world, I think that we need to recognize yourself as someone with responsibilities, with rights and obligation. And that's why, and those rights and obligation, if you sign a contract, if you drive a car, overdrive a car in Belgium or in Romania, there's a community that gives you that responsibility. And I think that it's interesting to see that in the last years, internet was anonymous. And then a few years ago, we have made the DSA regulation, which gave responsibility to the platforms. And now it was said by Stephanie in her presentation. No, we speak more about responsibility of the user. And so that Genesis ID, that authenticate ID is something very important. We speak about the data, we speak about the authenticate sources, we speak now about the authenticate data about your identity. And so the Genesis ID, I think, must be guaranteed by the community. That's not the government, that's not the ministers who guarantee that. The government exists because the community exists. And that's what's I call living together.
Can I compliment a little bit? I'm going to tell you a very short story. After post 9/11, when we saw what happened, Europe immediately jumped into the opportunity and they started to make regulations and directives, which created the opportunities for the industry. That's why identity industry in Europe is leading worldwide. Let's call a cat or a dog a dog. The Anglo-Saxon countries have been lagging behind, right? In the US, you can tonight at home, I can print a small PVC card, I have a driver's license, and I will identify myself. Now, what's happened is that even though they were lagging behind, the fact that with this standard, I touched upon the golden three, passport, driver license, ID. The ISO 18013 is the mobile driver license standard, is a worldwide one, pushed by the US. It's actually a mobile ID standard. It's a standard which regulates how you should set the data in containers in an app. What's happened is that the US have become now front runners in this. Half of the states have already deployed or active in deploying MDL, which is actually an ID, which is a standard which is being referenced to in what Europe is doing. But of course, Europe is going to go one step beyond that. So that's how the users there are getting back control. They're making a quantum jump. They're going immediately to the MDL standard. That's where they get control back.
I also wanted to quickly comment on that because regarding the central role government identity, what we see when our technology is deployed at different customers, they handle identity and the concept totally different. We have cases where there is simply trust on first use. Somebody registers, they don't know who it is, maybe they only have a phone number or an email address. They authenticate them, and the next time it comes back, they simply re-authenticate. And you have the other extreme where they require a person to physically present himself with a passport or an EID, and then they set up the link, but afterwards they simply authenticate. So I think we will have a much more complex ecosystem and definitely not the one government ID where everything has to run through. I don't think that will be the case. There will be authentication in many places taking place.
Yeah, I was going to say, it really also depends on the use case, right? I mean, some authentication, like payments and things like this, but sometimes, for example, gaming has identity. Why? Because you may all know Fortnite. The worst thing that can arrive in a Fortnite gameplay is that you're level 35 and a guy who has a fake account and he's actually level 2 and comes in there. He just destroys the whole game for everybody. The same with World of Warcraft and so on. You don't need a government for that, but there are ways of identifying these people. So I really would say it depends on use case, right?
Question in the back.
Yeah.
Question from Casper, and I want to challenge to be the maybe second youngest person in the room. Anyway, my question is: we talk a lot about things in the future and all the fancy part, but in a day-to-day business, I see a lot of companies they're not even at the standards from today. So how do we make sure that also SMEs or companies have systems designed that never been designed to be connected to the digital world, be able to catch up and also connect?
I'll address your question to Patricia first, and then
Joker one.
There's a microphone up there, but otherwise I bring my.
Yes. So it's also for SMEs. It's all about everybody needs to comply to legislation and needs to you need to scale. It needs to be interoperability. You need to have, but of course also for smaller companies, everything has to do also with the scale of business. And so, do we have solutions that is also, let's say, will fit into your business operating model? I think there are many fintechs here this evening who have difficulties with that as well. And I think also it's also a task of our government to see that our
You want to compliment on that?
that we have this inclusive digital economy for all our businesses.
Yeah, of course, it's also my job. When I speak about the mindset we must develop here in Belgium, I speak about being smart nation. Smart nation, those are three pillars. that's convergent, working together. That's what we're doing today. It's being ambitious. I think that's also a weakness in Belgium. We are not ambitious enough. And third is inclusion. Inclusion is really important because as you speak about digital identity, it speaks to everybody. That's only the use case that a company can use, but it's inclusion. And so since 2 years, I have met so many people, and what I have identified is that the difference between the people who know the technology of the future and the people who are blocked in the technology in the past is really important. There are people who live in a world who will come in 20 years or in 40 years, and people blocked in a world existing 20 years ago. And that's the challenge, is to continue to push the frontrunners as fast as possible at a higher level of ambition, but in the meantime, to bring back the person who are laying in the back. So that's one of my ambition. But obviously, in a complex federal state, the objective to do that must be tackled by the regions, because the regions has the competency to help the SMEs to develop their skills. So that's really a problem, and that's for many parts of digitization in Belgium. That's the problem. We have, and we have seen that during the COVID period, we have 9 ministers of health. Yeah, that's really good. And you will love even more, because I think that we have 52 ministers of digitization, and that's the problem. As you speak about health, as you speak about justice, as you speak about economy, and then education, and that's really a problem. So I think that's convergency. That's why I spoke about a pillar of the mindset smart nation. We must more work together. And so I decided around the work that I did with the digital minds around 10 ambition. One of the ambition is about inclusion. I decided to make a council with all the ministers to put the same ambition on the table. To say, okay, who will work on which ambition and which all this the energy that's needed, and the inclusion of the SMEs is really, really important. But obviously there's also something that's really important, and I've heard how would be the world in 10 years, 20 years about behavior recognition. I still have a lot of doubts about that, about the minimization, about the GDPR, about the privacy, so we will see. But I think for most of SMEs, the importance of developing low-cost technology or of low-tech technology is also something that can be useful today. A lot of things that the SMEs could develop are complicated to develop, but a lot of technology are really accessible, easy to use, low cost. And so maybe that even me as Secretary of State of Digitization, I must say, okay, it's a good thing to live in a world of which will happen in 20 years. But the digitization is today, and maybe that low tech can be more efficient today than high tech in 20 years from now.
The thing with SMEs is that if you're an SME in retail or in construction, that's your business. You're in retail, that's what you know. You're in construction, that's what you know. You're not into cryptography or authentication protocols. And you probably want to look into outsourcing your authentication mechanism. That is why I said it earlier, at myid.be, we said we need to make sure that the solution that we provide is easy to integrate at low cost for the people that want to use it. And the thing is, with a password, I don't care if you register at a game, with an account called Darth Vader or whatever, and a password. But the problem is people have accounts at 50 or 100 websites, and they use the same password on virtually all of them. And that is why we need to go to a passwordless system. And there's organizations and companies, some of them present here tonight, like you, like It's Me, like us, that offer passwordless solutions that can be easy to integrate and at a low cost.
Another question here from the audience. Hi, I'm Andrew from the company Expand. We're an open banking company. And the question I'd like to ask is, I've heard a lot of really cool stuff about these wallets, these different pillars, and really the whole mentality of giving back the power to the people of their own data. This may be a really personal question for each one of you. Their own Spotify data, and that they could share it with Tidal and with other streaming platforms? Or do you think that that is one step too far and that it's something that is unattainable for our world right now?
And a bit crystal ball who wants to take look into it and share what they see.
Yeah, maybe from the financial services perspective, because you talk about open banking, PSD2, open insurance, open finance. I think the word has been said already several times. Data is the new gold. So we all know what it is about, and it's about discovering new business models. Look, hey, you mentioned Spotify. Hey, what a fantastic new business model. It existed until a few 10 years ago. Before that, everybody was still just listening to radio or to CDs. It's amazing what this kind of data modeling has changed our lives, the business models, and also on the banking and on the insurance side. So again, European legislation made it possible so that you, as an account holder, you get grip again on your transactions details. Before that, only banks, financial institutions had access to those data. Now you can decide yourself, and who knows, it's still a bit emerging. Also, in my opinion, certainly here in Belgium, I must say. Let's please all await the new business models and the new service offerings and all the new opportunities that will come out of it. And the good thing also from Europe is you can control whatever you want to share. If you don't want to share your musical preferences, there are also several options within Spotify. You can put your playlist private and so on and so on. So you do have this little kind of control. But you know what I mean. I do hope for the new business models come. Yeah.
A very short answer for time's sake.
I think it's all about authoritative source. Like a driver's license, the authoritative source is the government. But if you're buying something at a web shop, you don't need to supply your government-known official address. My son orders stuff to be delivered at his what is it called, his kot in Ghent, and not at his official address. That's what he types in the website. If what you need to supply is a delivery address, you control it and you share it when you want stuff to be delivered. If what you need is an official document, you go and get it at the authoritative source.
I would say I think that the business model based on the data will be disrupted in the coming years. I think because more and more the people will want to have control of the data. And I agree the fact that today, you put out your button, okay, agree, cookies, okay, agree. Because I think that education is there yet. we don't understand what happens with the policy that we agree with. There is something that, to my point of view, is really important, is the way we identify the ownership of the data. And I think that there is a singularity in Europe with the GDPR. The GDPR says, okay, you as people must become the owner of the data. I know that on a legal view, that's not the case. But I think that the principle must be researched to the end. And to say, okay, in Europe, that's the people who are owner of the data, which music they listen to and so on. In the United States, it's maybe more the company. And China is in the government. I think that the way we build digitization in Europe is based on European value. And maybe that our European value, and I see that in the European Council, is more to say, okay, your data of what you do, what you want, what you love, that's your business, and that's your property. And we will give you the ability to choose with whom to share that. That's the basic of the consent. And that's what I want to build. And that's what I've already begun to build. I saw Jack making me a link of ice a few seconds ago, because the first project I put in place was my data. My data was a website where you can see what are the databases owned by the government about people. That's not a personal experience, but at the end of June, that's released today. Normally, not Jack. By the end of June, you will be able to check which data, a part of the data, obviously, which data we have, who has consulted it, and for which reason. I think that's a first step in transparency. That's a first step to explain to you, okay, that's the data we have, that's the data we share between services, and finally, in a few months or years, you must have the ability to choose with whom you will share the data. And finally, we were also on projects to allow you to give your data at your desk. So that's the last principle for you. To research, for example. So, okay, my personal data about my health, I want to share it when I die to help researchers and so on. But that's your choice. That must not be the choice of a company, of a government, I think.
Thank you for this great way of ending our normal time for questions. I see the hands going up, but we have a timing. Round of applause. The speakers must be seen. I will try to make one short thank you, because ending on values is great. And this inspiring example, I think, an inspiration for all of us from the financial services and technology industry to make sure that this principle of consent of our users, of making sure that the data are securely shared according to the purpose that they have been given and trusted to us, is something that we take home. And I saw a lot of, it was a good night, I think, for collaboration, and a bad night for people that live on, how to say, the social media conflict, and press is looking for articles why this one is there and not, because we've heard a lot of love between the speakers and collaboration. So I hope that in that spirit we can continue. And Alessandra is going to give us the closing remarks on practicalities. I think this mic is louder. Go ahead.
I don't need to be louder. I just need to be very short, I believe, because we are quite late. I've got it's always me ending everything, and so I've got it's very ungrateful, and I have actually every time to do my presentation in 2 minutes instead of 5. But I see a lot of new faces tonight, and I wanted to explain to you who is organizing this. It's Fintech Belgium. Toon is part of the board. I know that Xavier is in the room. We have Jean-François, we have Patricia, and I don't know if anyone else is from the board. Yes, Joan. Sorry, Joan. And so a lot of volunteers are part of the board. We represent more than 130 members. We're talking about fintechs, regtechs involved in, as you've seen here, security, infrastructure, a lot of payments as well. Very much linked to the DNA of Belgium, as I always explain. We are big savers in Belgium. We have a lot of solutions as well in financing and investment. I will just do it very short. You have more information on our website. You can discover all our numbers on our website. We have also a mapping with more data on our industry. We have 3 missions as Fintech Belgium is to promote our fintechs, to be a platform of dialogue with the regulator, with the politicians, and also the rest of the industry. We are also connected to many other hubs. We have Norway in the Phoenix event. Yay! and yeah, the 3rd mission is what I like calling Make the Magic Happen, and it's what's happening tonight. It's sharing information, sharing best practices, and so on. We are not funded by the government, unfortunately. Yes.
Another job.
Another mission. We came with 3 objectives, and now we have 2 more. And so we are looking for partners, more members to support us. We are 4 people working for a non-profit, and you see, it's for the good cause. We work with, as you have seen there, also at the European level, European Commission, Parliament, and so on. We organize mostly events. I'm not going to go through many of them. We also have a hub, an innovation hub. We are really trying to be the platform for innovation where all the stakeholders in our industry can meet and collaborate. So we are here at Dell. Dell is very on the way to becoming a partner of our ecosystem already by hosting us tonight. We have Proximus as well. We have many sponsors, many partners, and we collaborate as well with banks, insurance companies, financial services who need help and scouting and collaboration and open innovation with fintechs. And we are really the platform for that.
Alessandra, on open innovation, if your company has a need or an idea and would like to know which of our fintech members could help them, we do matchmaking events. We give us a briefing, we do the scouting, we do the pre-selection, we bring 3 good startups. We pitch to you, and then you negotiate how you can.
3 is a low number. We can bring many more.
We'll do a selection of the 3 very best matches.
Also, in identifying your challenge and so on. So really, come to us if you have these. We have now we organize a lot of events. So I've heard tonight from 2 or 3 times that data is the new gold. I think it's more the new petrol, actually, because it's what makes the whole world running at the moment, our industry and many others. And as you can see in our program, we will have 2 other meetups before the end of the semester. It will be it will be on open finance. We're talking about data. That's another good topic. And on the data economy. And it's going to be, data is hot, definitely. And so don't miss those. And one that I'd like, we have also one on FinTech Ladies on Web3. And the big one that I really would like to insist on is the Digital Finance Summit. You can follow, I will show you a little bit more now. You can follow all the events in our industry, our calendar, but also others on our website. And I hope that this one is going to run.
It's going to say 8th of December. That's the date you have to remember.
Here we go. Yes. So the DFS, it's the 8th edition, I believe, this year. And it's going to be organized at the Egg. We have some of our
Hello, everybody.
here.
My name is Tom Van Aken. I'm muting myself. That's a really weird experience. Go ahead, Alessandra.
Thank you. And so we are expecting way over 700. This one doesn't work out.
Because of the. It's connected. I'm muting. Go ahead. You have a lot.
No. More than
Go.
700
Improvise.
people. Exactly. Financial services, but it's also open to other industries. We're talking about retail, we're talking about telco, and we are really wanting to have all industries to come, because we were talking about data. What we've seen, and we've touched this topic upon as well, is the fact that finance is finance. Finance is everywhere, and we see it. You can hear me or not?
Yes.
Yeah. Great. You see shared economy. We see cars. I mean, like fueling your car now. You're going to have payment coming out of the sidewalks. You're going to have fintechs appearing in banks, but also in other industries. And all these topics are going to be touched upon. Again, data being at the center of all of this. So I really invite you to come for that day. We have 4 stages, a European FinTech pitch battle, more than 100 speakers, and I'm going to just leave you there. You have all the information there, and we have a lot of partnership opportunities for bigger and smaller sponsors. We support also our fintechs. All the smaller fintechs can have a 50% discount on the packages. Why I'm saying that is that you won't come to see the big ones. You will see the whole industry, the whole ecosystem, and that's really what the Digital Finance Summit is about. If you're looking for a job in fintech, I won't let this video to go to the end, but we have a career portal. Don't hesitate to go there, to share it, because that's the way to go. We were talking about the talent as a big challenge. We're trying to do our best as well on that. And I just wanted to also, because they are not all here, but if we are able to do this and to organize these events, it's thanks to a lot of our partners. Actually, Proximus should be on there since today, so thank you very much. and many others. So I'm not going to hold you for longer. I'm just going to ask the speakers to come here so that we can take a picture, a group picture, and we'll join you downstairs. Thank you again for being here, because it was without you it wouldn't exist. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everybody. Downstairs.